can an adult who has no childhood references with health worries develop health anxiety after seeing their friend get sick? Or can an adult develop a fear of heights, for example, that isn't tied to a childhood reference? Or does it always tie back to a childhood reference? It's a great question. And the answer is that we can't experience anything for which we don't already have a reference. But the key is that the reference isn't always logical or obvious to the conscious mind. So taking those examples you've given, first, the health anxiety example. As the adult's brain registers the data regarding their friend getting sick, so what they see, what they hear, and so on, their brain is in every moment comparing that data to implicit memories from childhood experiences to determine what this experience in this moment as an adult means. Now, they may not have experienced anyone being sick when they were a child, but they may have experienced a feeling of uncertainty or fear, and perhaps so nothing necessarily to do with sickness, but maybe to do with their parents arguing, or being bullied in school, or a parent threatening to leave, or the death of a pet or a family member. So feelings of uncertainty or fear around created in those experiences. And then as their brain registers the uncertainty of their friend's illness, it may connect that with the uncertainty of, for example, whether their parent will leave or not, as the closest reference for that uncertainty of their friend being ill. So a friend being ill will mean something different to different people with different childhood references. Each person's brain is constantly comparing data from the current moment to implicit memories from childhood to find the closest match, not necessarily an exact match. And the matches will usually be based on how they're feeling, the chemical state, rather than logical data. So the brain will then produce the same chemical response in the experience with the friend that it did in the threat of the parent leaving, for example. The conscious mind is only aware of what's happening in this moment, which is the friend's illness, but the feelings which are caused by the chemicals triggered by the unconscious part of the brain are coming from the reference of the threat of a parent leaving. Then moving forward, the brain may then connect the friend's illness with that same chemical response, with the additional help of the conscious mind giving meaning to it. In other words, the conscious mind, using logic and reason, gives the meaning to the feelings that it's because of the friend's illness. And as those neurons connect, so thoughts are connections between neurons in the neocortex, they trigger more of those stress chemicals, perpetuating the feelings. And the more this is repeated, which is the unconscious part of the brain referring to the childhood memories and triggering those stress chemicals, along with the conscious mind's contributions of the thoughts about the illness and the thoughts that these feelings are about the illness, the more those stress chemicals are amped up, and the brain is adding more and more connections between illness and that particular combination of stress chemicals that creates the sensations we recognize as anxiety. I'm feeling anxious. And then using your second example, so the fear of heights, even though there may be no experience with heights in the person's childhood, again, the brain is constantly comparing current data from stimuli, so what we're seeing, hearing, feeling, and so on in this moment, with the closest match from implicit memory. So as that person gets to the top of the ladder, for example, and looks down, Their brain is comparing their current experience, including the emotional state they were in before they started climbing, along with other experiences that have been going on in their life at that time, with implicit memory from childhood. And it may be that the closest match for being up on that ladder is standing in front of the class being berated or humiliated by a teacher, or being on stage in a school play and forgetting their words and being teased by the other children, or being lost in a shopping mall. So in these cases, it's nothing to do with heights. It's to do with being alone and vulnerable, and therefore in danger. And being, on that ladder on their own, the brain may just connect that something about that experience with those other experiences. So the brain then triggers the same stress chemicals that were produced in those childhood experiences of being alone and vulnerable. And the conscious mind makes the connection between that feeling of fear and being in danger created by the stress chemicals and the height as they look down from the ladder. And then again, the conscious mind thinks about the height while registering the fear. And those thoughts, those connections between neurons trigger more of the same stress chemicals, perpetuating the fear. And so again, the more this is repeated, the unconscious part of the brain referring to the childhood memories and triggering those stress chemicals, along with the conscious mind's contribution of the thoughts about heights and the fear that they're feeling, the more those stress chemicals are amped up, and the brain is adding more and more connections between heights and that combination of stress chemicals that creates the sensations we recognize as fear. So I hope that clarifies, I hope that answers the question, but let me know if you need more clarification on that.